Knox County School Scholars. Welcome to another edition of KCS at Home. I am Ms. Deathridge. I am a social studies teacher for 6th grade at Vine Middle Magnet School. I am so glad that you are tuning in with us today. All right, so we have another review lesson for you today. This lesson, we're focusing on the unification of Greece and the spread of Greek culture, but we're doing this with a theme. Our theme is all about, should Alexander be considered one of the greats? Should he? Let's think about that. Do we know some of the greats? Yeah, we know about Sargon the Great. We know about Ramses the Great, Ashoka the Great, including Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi, who united all of China. Well, some consider him as a villain, but he united all of China. He was still great. Well, now we have a new person on the scene who is considered great, Alexander the Great. So let's take a look at what we're going to focus on today. Our standard comes straight from the state of Tennessee. It says, explain the unification of the Greek city-states by Macedonia and analyze the impact of Alexander the Great and the diffusion of Hellenistic culture. All right, so in your packet, you're going to see 4 pages. Let me show you what those 4 pages look like. You're going to see this first page that says, should Alexander be considered one of the greats? You're also going to see my brand new box notes. Sorry. Okay, this one is all about the questions to go along with the text above. And then the third page is a map and a timeline with questions to go along with the map and the timeline. And then your fourth and final page is for you to make a poster. We're going to go over all 4 of these pages in detail, okay? All right, so let's get started. Now, every time that we decide that we're going to read text, we need to read with a purpose, okay? Reading it with a purpose keeps it from being dry and boring and making us go to sleep. Yeah, I get it. That's a lot of text up there to read. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our what, why, and how, and then we're going to look at the questions that we need to answer in order for us to read that text and be able to be engaged with the text, okay? All right, so our learning target, the what are we learning, the why are we learning it, and how we know that we've learned it. It's all about explaining the unification of Greece and the spread of Greek culture. Why? So that we can understand the culture of ancient Greece and how it still affects us today. And if you didn't know, kind of does, especially if you wear Nike shoes or if you've ever seen the Starbucks logo. There's a lot of other things I can name, like the Disney movie Hercules. Yeah, Percy Jackson. Have you ever heard of him? Oh, yeah, the movies are great. So it does still kind of affect us today. And how? How do you know that you know what we're learning? You should be able to explain to me Philip II and Alexander's role in uniting Greece, and you should be able to analyze Alexander's impact in cultural diffusion. All right, those are 2 things that you should be able to do by the end of this lesson. And of course, it's a review lesson, but just in case you missed something while we were in school, this is where you're going to get it, okay? All right, so let's take a look at our questions that's going to help us get through this text. All right, so number 1 says define these terms. So I'm going to say the terms, and I want you to repeat them after me. Everyone say Macedonia, phalanx, Hellenistic. Awesome, thank you. All right, so you're going to define those terms based on either your background knowledge or your previous knowledge or the information that you gather from the text. The second question that you're going to be looking to answer says using at least 2 key terms, explain in 3 to 5 sentences Philip's role in uniting Greece. Question number 3. What were Philip's plans after conquering and unifying Greece? Number 4. When Philip died, to whom were his throne and plans passed? Number 5. In 1 to 2 sentences, explain how Alexander maintained control over the Greeks. And number 6. In 2 to 3 sentences, explain how Alexander became the ruler of what used to be the Persian Empire. Number 7. What was the impact of Alexander's conquest on the people and lands he conquered? I want you to list 3. Number 8. Cultural diffusion can be described as a mixture or blending of different cultures. What evidence in the text suggests that there was a cultural diffusion, and what is it called? Okay, those are the questions that we're going to be looking for as we read this text. Okay, we're not going to focus on question number 9. That is a creative thinking. That's you expanding your creativity and knowing about Alexander. Okay, all right, let's go to our text. And I'm actually going to read this with you. Let me shrink my bubble here. There we go. This is going to make it a whole lot easier. And let me get my grading glasses on. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now, I want you to notice that I've already numbered the paragraphs. So as I read, I want you to follow along with your text and number your paragraphs. Think about the questions that we looked at. When you see things that might answer those questions, go ahead and highlight or underline a circle. Okay? Stay engaged as we read together. All right? All right, let's begin. In 359 BC, Philip II became king of Macedonia. After becoming king of Macedonia, Philip's main target became Greece, which was located south of Macedonia. Soon the leaders of Athens realized that they would become the target of Philip's powerful army. Athens called for all Greeks to join together. Few people responded due to being weakened from previous civil wars. Do we remember those wars? Yeah, I think they were the Peloponnesian Wars. They were. Philip defeated the Greeks because he borrowed and improved many of the strategies Greek armies used in battle. For example, Philip's soldiers, like the Greeks, fought as a phalanx. A phalanx was a group of warriors who stood close together in a square with overlapping shields and spears. As soldiers in the front lines were killed, others stepped up from behind to fill their spots. All right, so here we have a king in Macedonia who saw a great opportunity to go and conquer all of Greece. Greece is weak. They have already been through the Persian Wars. They've already been through the Peloponnesian Wars. And he is a lover of Greek culture, so why not conquer a land that he loves? And that's exactly what he did. So let's continue to read. Paragraph 2, make sure you number your paragraphs. Philip improved upon the Greeks' idea. He gave his soldiers spears that were much longer than those of his opponents. This allowed his army to attack effectively in any battle. Philip also sent cavalry and archers into battle to support the phalanx. All right, so here he is. He's using longer spears. He's using these tactics like the phalanx, and he's also instituting a cavalry and archers into his army. So cavalry are men that's on horsebacks. Archers are the men with the bow and arrows. Okay? Paragraph number 3. After conquering Greece, Philip turned his attention to Persia. He planned to march east and conquer the Persian Empire, but he never made it. He was murdered in 336 BC while celebrating his daughter's wedding. When Philip died, his throne and his plans passed to his son, Alexander. At the age of 20, Alexander inherited his father's kingdom and was as strong a leader as his father had been. He immediately went south to end the revolt in Thebes. All right, so this is when Alexander, the son of the king of Macedonia, comes on the scene. He's 20 years old. He's trained most of his life. He studied under Aristotle. And so he knows how to go in and use army tactics and strategies. And he was able to go and stop the Thebans from revolting. Let's read more about it in paragraph 5. It says, within a year, Alexander had destroyed Thebes and enslaved the Theban people. He used Thebes as an example to other Greeks of what would happen if they turned against him. Then, confident that the Greeks would not rebel again, he set out to build an empire. All right, so at this time, here you have the Spartans, you have the Athenians, and you have all these other Greek city-states who could have rebelled, but the Theban people did. And when they did, they had consequences. And their consequences were large, so large that the rest of the Greeks did not want those problems with Alexander and his army. So he was able to keep a stronghold over the Greek and over that part of his empire. All right, let's continue reading. Paragraph 6. Alexander's efforts to build an empire made him one of the greatest conquerors in history. These efforts earned him the name Alexander the Great. In 334 BC, he attacked the Persians, whose army was much larger than his own. But Alexander's troops were well trained and ready for battle. They defeated the Persians time after time. Now, let me bring this into perspective. When the Greeks fought the Persians, the Greeks, I'm sure, had no idea how vast this empire was. I'm not even sure if Alexander knew how vast it was, but Alexander wanted a piece of that. Let me show you how large the Persian Empire was. So let's take a look. The Persian Empire had expanded over 3 continents. You have Africa, Asia, including Asia Minor, and part of Europe. Okay, this is a vast empire. This is where Mesopotamia used to be. They were heading on their way towards the Indus River and into India. They had already conquered what used to be Israel and parts of Egypt and parts of Thrace. All right, so this was a large empire, and Alexander was from right here above Greece, from this little civilization called Macedonia. And for him to conquer all of Greece and then to conquer this entire empire, that's a major move. So let's continue to read. All right, let's see here. Okay. According to legend, Alexander visited a town called Gordium in Asia Minor, present-day Turkey, while he was fighting the Persians. There he heard an ancient tale about the Gordium knot tied by an ancient king. The tale said that whoever untied the knot will rule all of Asia. According to the legend, Alexander pulled out his sword and cut right through the knot. Taking this as a good sign, he and his army set out again. After defeating the Persians near the town of Issus, Alexander went to Egypt, which was a part of the Persian Empire. The Persian governor had heard of his skill in battle. He surrendered without a fight in 332 BC and crowned Alexander Pharaoh. After a short stay in Egypt, Alexander set out again, near the town of Gaugamela. He defeated the Persian army for the last time. After the battle, the Persian king Darius III, not Darius the Great, fled and was soon killed by one of his own nobles. With Darius III's death, Alexander became the ruler of what had been the Persian Empire. This is the major move that I was talking about and referring to. Now, here's Darius III, who was the king of the Persian Empire at the time. And because his armies continued to lose battle after battle against Alexander, he felt that there was no way he can win. So he fled. And of course, anytime being a leader and you give up, you're going to lose your credibility. And so, of course, one of his nobles ended up killing him. And because of his death, Alexander became the new ruler of all of the Persian Empire. All right, so let's continue to read. Paragraph number 11. Still intent on building his empire, Alexander led his army through Central Asia. As he went along, he worked to spread Greek influence throughout his empire by founding cities in the lands he conquered. He modeled his new cities after the cities of Greece. He named many of them Alexandria, after himself. He built temples and theaters like those in Greece. He then encouraged Greek settlers to move to the new cities. These settlers spoke Greek, which became common throughout the empire. In time, Greek art, literature, and science spread into surrounding lands. All right, so as Alexander is going through and on this campaign of building this mighty empire, he is not being abusive towards the people or forcing them to be Greek. He allowed them to keep their customs and their ways. All he did was encourage the people who were from Greece and from Macedonia who spoke Greek. And he encouraged them to go and settle in all these different places. And when he did, they brought their language, their culture with them. And so people start engaging with these Greek settlers. Greek language became one of the common languages of this time. As a matter of fact, if we look back in history, when we study Israel, we studied that the Hebrew Bible was written in Hebrew. I have a trivia question for you. What was the New Testament written in? Even though we haven't talked about it yet. I just wonder if you know that. All right, so let's continue. All right, paragraph number 12. Even as he supported the spread of Greek culture, Alexander encouraged conquered people to keep their own customs and traditions. As a result, a new blended culture developed in Alexander's empire. It combined elements of Persian, Egyptian, Syrian, and other cultures with Greek ideas. Because this new culture was not completely Greek or Hellenic, historians call it Hellenistic or Greek-like. It wasn't purely Greek, but it was heavily influenced by the Greek ideas. All right, so here, as he's spreading Greek culture, you still have the Persian culture, you have the Egyptian culture, you have the Syrian culture. And so we talked about diffusion, culture diffusion, and these cultures coming together and blending, and they almost start to become their own culture, and they did. And as one of my best friends, Miss Jones says, here, culture diffusion has a name. Her name is Helen, Hellenistic. All right, last paragraph, number 13. In 327 BC, Alexander crossed the Indus River and wanted to push deeper into India, but his exhausted soldiers refused to go any further. Disappointed, Alexander began the long march home. He never made it home because in 323 BC, he became ill and died in Babylon. He was only 32 years old. Do you think Alexander should be considered one of the greats? Why or why not? I'll let you decide. All right. Okay, so majority of this information came from our textbook. So let's take a look. Again, these are the questions that you're going to answer based on the text we just read. Okay. Let's look at number 9. Once you've answered questions 1 through 8, number 9 says creative thinking. A legend can be described as a story that have been passed down from generation to generation that many people in a society know but cannot prove to be true or untrue. There is a legend that Alexander cut the Gordian knot and could have controlled all of Asia. Unfortunately, his soldiers refused to go any further once they had crossed the Indus River. Alexander and his troops turned away from conquest to go home, only for Alexander to die at the young age of 32. Now, this is what I want you to do for me. Below, write your own legend of Alexander's life as if he and his soldiers had continued their conquests. What can you imagine? Can you imagine him going all the way past, through India, past the Ganges River, maybe the Himalayan mountains, and some other places, okay? So you come up with your own legend of what would have happened if Alexander has still been able to conquer all of Asia. All right, the second task I want you to do is based off of the map and the timeline on your third page. Okay, so we're just going to look at the map. Let's look at the map real quick. So the map shows Alexander's empire. It shows Alexander's campaign, the arrow. Make sure you pay attention to this key. It shows where he went with the dates. Okay, it also shows where Macedonia is located. It shows the empire that he gained and other regions that were dependent on Alexander. It also shows where the battles were located. The starburst shows battles. Okay? Do not forget to use your compass rose. Your north, east, southwest. Never eat soggy waffles. Ugh, nasty. Okay. All right, so let's look at our timeline. The timeline below shows what was going on during this time, okay? So we're going to go back before Alexander, 449 BC. This is when the Persian War ends. And then almost 100 years later, 359, or a little bit over 100 years later, 359 BC, Philip II is crowned king of Macedonia. In 338 BC, Philip conquers Greece, uniting all Greek city-states and plans to conquer Persia. In 336 BC, we have 2 important things that's happening here. Well, 3. First thing, Philip II is assassinated. Then Alexander, his son, inherits his throne and his plans. Darius III becomes king of Persia, all in the same year. In 334 BC, Alexander invades Asia. In 331 BC, Alexander defeats the Persian army for the last time in Gaugamela. In 329 BC, Alexander and his army crosses the Indus River. In 323 BC, Alexander dies in Babylon at the age of 32. This is also when the Hellenistic period begins. In 30 AD, the Hellenistic period ends due to the Roman conquest, and Jesus of Nazareth is crucified. These questions under your map and timeline are to help you to analyze both of these, okay? So we have 7 questions. I'm going to read them to you. Number 1 says, which direction did Alexander and his army travel to get to Egypt? You will need to use your compass rose on this map, okay? Number 2, it says, list the battle sites. Remember, those were indicated by the starburst on the map. Number 3, how many cities on the map are named after Alexander? Number 4, use the map in your background knowledge to argue why Alexander is considered great. Number 5, use the map in your background knowledge to argue why Alexander would not be considered great. Both of these questions are to help you build debating skills, okay? Number 6, how many years was Philip II king of Macedonia and ruler of Greece? This is using the timeline. There's a hint. It is a math question. You must subtract. Number 7, approximately how long was the Hellenistic period? This too is based on the timeline. It's a math question too. You must add. All right, and the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is to create a poster. You can use the back of this page or the back of one of the other pages. And what I want you to do is come up with an alternative title. And then I want you to come up with your conclusion. Question number 2 is going to help you decide which direction you want to take for your poster. So it says, add your conclusion to the question. Should Alexander be considered one of the greats? And I want you to know there's no wrong answer. It's based on your own conclusion, not mine or anyone else, okay? So if you do believe that he should be considered one of the greats, you can explain why. And this is to give you some ideas on which direction you would like to take your poster. And if you agree, if you say that no, he should not be considered as one of the greats, come up with a reason why and make sure you include that on your poster, okay? Number 3, it says list 5 facts or theories from reading the text or looking at the map or analyzing the timeline to support your conclusion. Number 4 says add 3 graphics that illustrate something from your conclusion or from the text or the map. You can even draw a timeline. Number 5, add your favorite quote from the text. And then number 6, design a decorative border for your poster. All right, so it should come out looking something like this. All right, you can choose to color the background after you've put all your facts in your quote and all your information on your poster, just to give it some pop and some color. All right, well, that is all of our assignment, our review lesson today. I hope you find this enjoyable. I'm going to tell you to stay safe, stay healthy. Everything is going to be okay. We miss you. We love you. Please reach out to your teachers. We want to see you. All right, we want to hear from you. And just know that we're here for you. Okay, have a great day. Bye.